Try this in real life. Walk into the busiest coffee shop in your city, unannounced, with 5 friends. Do it again tomorrow, and the day after. 236 times. You will never once get the best seat in the building. They always do. 10 years, and that orange couch is sitting there waiting like it's got their name on it. The show treats it as furniture. It should be a miracle. Turn the resolution up and the miracle gets an explanation. There's a small reserved sign on the table in front of it. Not in every episode, but often enough that people have been arguing about it since streaming made it visible. Now, who reserves a table at a coffee shop? Nobody? Coffee shops don't take reservations, unless the manager decides otherwise. The manager is Gunther. Gunther is in love with Rachel. Gunther is in love with Rachel for 10 straight years, on camera, with nothing to show for it except 150 episodes of standing very still behind an espresso machine. He was holding her seat, and when Radio Times put it to James Michael Tyler in 2019, he shot it down. He said he never did it. Probably a set designer's call, or a writer's. He'd never thought about it at all. Though looking back, he said, it made a lot of sense. He didn't write it, he just played it that way for 10 years without knowing. That's 1 down and 7 to go, and I'm ruling on every single one of them. If you want to argue with the rulings, subscribing makes that easier for both of us. I want to give this one the best possible run at it, because it deserves that much. Rachel says she doesn't sleep with men on the first date. Monica names 3 men who beg to differ. The last one is Ben Wyatt. Now, Ben Wyatt in Parks and Recreation was the youngest mayor in Minnesota history at 18, got run out of office, and spent years afterwards as a state auditor moving between cities for work. Fans put him at 26 the year Friends says that name. Rachel is 29, both shows on NBC. Both shows in the same broad universe of neurotic American comedy. Honestly, it works. Then somebody checked when Ben Wyatt was actually written. 2010. Friends finished in 2004. There's also this, Season 2 of Parks and Rec. Leslie Knope turns to the documentary crew and starts talking about Jennifer Aniston, her love life, her happiness, who she should stay away from. Aniston is a real actress in Pawnee, Indiana, which makes Rachel Green a character on a television show in that world. 2 shows, 1 coincidence, no crossover. Unlike what happens next, which is not a coincidence at all, and there's a man who will tell you so himself. Christmas Day, 2023. A comedian named Scott Westwood posts a short video with a fairly unhinged claim that Monica and Chandler moved into the Home Alone house. His evidence is whatever you can see through their windows in Season 10. A neighbor's garage, a blue house with a wreath, both of them, he says, from Kevin McCallister's street. 14 million people watched it. A great many of them arrived in the comments to explain why it was nonsense, mainly that Friends is set in New York, Home Alone is set in Winnetka, Illinois, and those places are 700 miles apart. Then somebody with a slightly better vantage point joined in. Darren Janes was the art director on Friends for 209 episodes. He replied in the comments, and he led with, "This is hilarious. You caught me." Then he explained it. The house was a set on a soundstage. The script needed the actors to walk in through the front door, which meant the camera would see the street behind them, so something had to be out there. They hired a painted backing from Pacific Studios. The best one available was the one built for Home Alone. Everybody was right. It's Kevin's street. Nobody lives on it. Which is the last easy answer you're going to get. The next one has 2 versions, and they can't both be true. Judy Geller is one of the cruelest characters on this show, and almost nobody says so. She calls Monica's apartment a mess. She raises Monica's weight at a family dinner, and in the same breath, she'll talk about Ross like he personally invented medicine. The show files this under running joke. Overbearing mother, golden son, put upon daughter. Fine. Except there's a line in Season 7 that turns the joke into a question. Ross explains why he's the favorite. He was a medical miracle. His parents had been told they couldn't have children. So, Monica. If the Gellers couldn't conceive, and Ross was the impossible one, then either Monica is a second miracle nobody ever mentions, or Monica came from somewhere else. That's the theory. Judy had an affair. Monica is the living reminder, and 30 years of criticism is what guilt sounds like when it never gets said out loud. It's a genuinely elegant explanation for the meanest relationship on the show. And it falls over 11 episodes earlier, when Jack and Judy tell their engagement story. Judy got pregnant by accident because the dog ate her diaphragm. And notice what that actually kills. Not the theory, the evidence for it. Judy's behavior towards Monica is still on screen, still unexplained, and still there for anyone who wants to build a case out of it. I'll be straight with you about where this lands, because it doesn't land anywhere clean. The evidence for it is real. The evidence against it is also real, and it's in the same season. My read is that a writer's room contradicted itself and nobody noticed, but I know how that sounds, and I know some of you have the other read. Say it below. This is the one I actually want to argue about, especially since Ross is about to lose something considerably bigger than an argument. Rachel has just had Emma. Ross's father is holding her and he says something that should stop the room. He calls her his first grandchild. Ross has to point out there's already a grandson, 7 years old, called Ben, whose birth took up most of season 1. It's a 2-second joke. It's also the moment Friends admits out loud that it has forgotten one of its own characters. Ben Geller appears in 24 episodes. His last is season 8, the one where Joey dates Rachel. The show then runs another 54 episodes, and he is in exactly none of them. No explanation, no goodbye, and he never meets his sister. Kids leave sitcoms all the time. They don't usually leave this loudly. So, Ross lost custody. Carol went for it and won, and the case builds itself. He's sleeping with one of his students. He melts down in public over a stolen sandwich. His jealousy over a man Rachel works with blows up the show's central relationship. The likeliest real answer is duller. Cole Sprouse had a career, and Ben was never load-bearing. But when GQ asked Sprouse how he felt about being written out, he didn't reach for scheduling. He said critics would agree Ross was never really the most present father. He was the kid, and he's not defending him either. That's an actor agreeing with the audience. The next one runs the other way entirely. Every theory in this video so far came from the audience. This one came from the cast. Late in the run, Matt LeBlanc and Lisa Kudrow went to the writers with a pitch. Joey and Phoebe had been sleeping together for the entire 10 years, casually, the whole time, nobody knowing. And they didn't just want it mentioned, they wanted to go back and reshoot moments from earlier seasons, so that just before a scene you'd recognize instantly, you'd catch the two of them slipping out of a broom closet. The show said no. David Crane, who co-created it, explained the thinking later. Pairing off all 6 would have been, in his words, too tidy and too complete. Which leaves the theory somewhere strange. There's no proof, because it was never filmed. The show hands you plenty anyway. Phoebe names Joey as her backup husband if she's single at 40. Joey proposes to her when he thinks she's pregnant. Their physical boundaries are looser than any other pair in the group by a distance. And in a show that teases everything, that never once gets teased, 2 actors spent a decade playing something the page never said. Then they asked permission to make it real, and got turned down. So, it didn't happen. It also nearly did. And that's one Phoebe theory that came from somewhere unexpected. There's another one coming, and it's the one that made the woman who co-created this show lose her patience entirely. In one episode of Friends, Joey and Chandler walk into a restaurant on another network show and mistake the waitress for Phoebe. In that same episode, a character from that other show walks into Central Perk and mistakes Phoebe for the waitress. 2 sitcoms shaking hands in both directions, inside a single episode, in 1995. The other show is Mad About You. The waitress is Ursula Buffay, Phoebe's estranged twin, played by the same actress, because Lisa Kudrow was already working there when Friends cast her. Co-creator David Crane later explained how they pulled it off. His husband was on the Mad About You writing staff, so he was able to go and ask if the 2 shows could share her. Nice story. It's also the reason the rest of this works, because 3 years earlier, Mad About You had done the same thing with a different show. Paul Buckman went to settle the lease on his old apartment and found Cosmo Kramer living in it. Kramer even mentions a friend of his writing a sitcom for NBC. So Kramer knows Paul. Paul's wife knows Phoebe. One marriage, and the 2 biggest sitcoms of the 90s are standing in the same city. Here is what Friends tells you about Phoebe Buffay. Mostly in passing, mostly as jokes. Her mother died when she was a teenager. She lived on the street for years. She grew up around things nobody in that coffee shop has ever been near. The show says all of it, gets a laugh, and moves on. 10 seasons of that. So a theory arrived that took the jokes seriously. What if she never got off the street? What if she's outside Central Perk, watching 5 people through the window, and the whole show is what she made up out there? The good apartments, the friends who are always free, the husband, the twins. And to be clear about why it spread, it isn't because people wanted something bad for her. It's because the alternative reading of those jokes is worse. It was posted on Twitter in August 2015 by an account called STRNKS as a proposal for how the show should have ended. It has outlived almost every other theory about this series, including most of the ones in this video. 2 years later, a reporter read it aloud to Marta Kaufman, who co-created the show and who wrote the person it's about. She said it was the saddest thing I've ever heard. Then she called it terrible and insane and suggested the author needed a life. That's as close to a final answer as this show gets. It isn't true. It was never meant to be. It just tells you something that Kaufman had to feel it first before she could rule it out. 8 theories. One of them turned out to be a painted wall on a soundstage in Burbank. One of them got answered by the kid who played Ben, years after he grew up. And the biggest one got answered by the woman who wrote Phoebe, in a sentence she probably hadn't planned to say. Here's what I actually want from you. Not which theory you liked, which ruling you'd overturn. Pick one, tell me I got it wrong, and tell me why. I'll read them. There's a lot more of this show left,